You're sitting at the kitchen table, the morning light streaming in, and suddenly, you can't remember the name of the neighbor you've known for years. The face is clear in your mind, but the name, gone, like it's been erased. Moments like this can send a cold wave of fear through anyone over 60. They feel random, sudden, and deeply unsettling. You might brush it off as just aging, but what if the culprit was sitting right there on your plate this morning? What if it wasn't age alone, but something you ate, something you've eaten for years, slowly eroding the sharpness of your memory? Here's the truth. The threat to your brain may not come from the obvious villains like candy bars or fast food. No, this one hides in plain sight, in kitchens across the world, wrapped in wholesome marketing and decades of healthy breakfast advice. I've seen patients come into my clinic, confused, frustrated, and even ashamed, believing their slipping memory was inevitable. But when we looked closer, a pattern emerged. They all had a morning habit involving the very food I'm about to reveal. Before we dive in, if you haven't subscribed yet, I recommend you hit that button and turn on the bell so you never miss another health tip made just for you. If you enjoy this video, type 1 in the comments. If not, type 0 to let me know how I can make better content for you. Take the case of Mrs. Linda Myers, 68, a retired elementary school teacher. She came to see me after noticing she was forgetting lesson plans she had taught for decades, misplacing important items, and once leaving the stove on without realizing it. Her husband thought it might be early dementia, but Linda's physical exams were normal, and her brain scans showed only mild, age-related changes. It wasn't until we reviewed her daily routine that a clue appeared. Every morning, she began her day with the same healthy breakfast she'd been loyal to for years, a large bowl of pre-sweetened cereal with skim milk, sometimes accompanied by a glass of fruit juice. For decades, she had believed this was the right choice, light, low-fat, and fortified with vitamins. But here's what most people don't realize. When you pour that cereal into your bowl, you're not just getting whole grains. You're also getting anywhere from 10 to 20 grams of added sugar per serving, plus preservatives and flavor enhancers that can spike blood sugar and trigger inflammatory responses in the brain. For an aging brain, those sugar surges are like repeated blows to a fragile system. Over time, they damage small blood vessels, impair insulin sensitivity in brain cells, and can even shrink the hippocampus, the part of the brain responsible for forming memories. When we age, our brains lose some of their protective barriers. The blood-brain barrier, which normally acts like a filter, becomes more permeable. This means substances that were once kept out, like certain inflammatory compounds from processed foods, can more easily get in. Imagine your brain as a fortress with walls that have begun to crack. Every morning, Linda was letting in a flood of compounds that chipped away at her mental clarity. After just 6 weeks of replacing her cereal and juice breakfast with protein-rich eggs, fresh berries, and a handful of nuts, Linda reported fewer blank moments, better focus, and even improved energy levels. Her husband noticed it too. She was sharper in conversation and less forgetful about daily tasks. While this wasn't a miracle cure, it was proof of how powerfully breakfast choices can affect memory. And Linda is far from the only one. I've seen dozens of patients whose gradual memory loss was accelerated by the same unsuspected breakfast habits. It's not about one meal, it's about the slow, cumulative effect of years of choosing foods that work against your brain's needs. So if you're over 60, I want you to think carefully about what you're eating tomorrow morning. That comforting, familiar meal might be doing more harm than good. And if you think cereal is the only culprit, wait until you see what's coming next. Because the next breakfast favorite I'm about to reveal could be even more damaging to your brain's defenses. As we step deeper into this conversation, it's important to understand why the aging brain is so much more vulnerable to what's on your plate. You might think, I've been eating this way for decades. Why would it suddenly become a problem now? The answer lies in the subtle but profound changes that occur in your brain's defenses after the age of 60. One of the most critical is the decline in the integrity of the blood-brain barrier, BBB. This barrier is a tightly woven network of cells and proteins that acts like a security gate, allowing in nutrients and keeping out harmful substances. When you're young, it's highly selective, almost impossible for toxins and inflammatory compounds to breach. But as you age, chronic low-grade inflammation, oxidative stress, and even small blood vessel damage can cause microscopic gaps to form in this barrier. Suddenly, compounds from your food, preservatives, artificial additives, excessive glucose, have a much easier time slipping into the brain's environment. To give you a clearer picture, let me tell you about George Simmons, 72, a retired accountant. George had always prided himself on his sharp mind. He could balance complex spreadsheets in his head and recall names and dates from decades ago without hesitation. But over the past year, he noticed something troubling, losing his train of thought mid-sentence, forgetting whether he'd locked the door or repeating the same question to his wife without realizing it. His family began whispering about the early stages of Alzheimer's. When I examined George, his physical health seemed decent. Blood pressure only slightly elevated, cholesterol moderately high, but his blood work showed elevated inflammatory markers and higher than normal fasting blood sugar. When we reviewed his diet, one habit stood out. Every morning, George ate a large bagel topped with a generous spread of sweetened cream cheese, washed down with a flavored latte from a local cafe. To him, it felt like a light breakfast. To his brain, it was a daily assault. Here's why. Refined carbohydrates like white bagels are rapidly converted into glucose, causing a sharp spike in blood sugar. For an older brain, these repeated glucose surges are toxic. They produce advanced glycation end products, AGs, compounds that bind to brain proteins, stiffen blood vessels, and disrupt the communication between neurons. Add to that the sugar and artificial flavorings in his latte, and George was essentially creating a biochemical storm every morning that weakened his brain's ability to repair itself. Mainstream medicine has long acknowledged that elevated blood sugar can harm the brain, but research now shows that even mild, chronic spikes, well below diabetic levels, can impair memory and accelerate cognitive decline in seniors. And here's the kicker. Once these changes begin, the brain doesn't have the same resilience it did in your 30s or 40s. Recovery is possible, but it requires consistent, protective habits. After I worked with George to replace his bagel and latte routine with a savory omelet, avocado slices, and unsweetened green tea, he began noticing improvements within 2 months. His mental fog episodes became less frequent, and his wife told me she felt like she had her old George back in conversations. The changes weren't instant, but they were steady, and that's exactly what we want for brain health at this stage of life. This is why understanding the biology of your aging brain is so important. Once you see how vulnerable it becomes, you realize breakfast isn't just about satisfying hunger. It's about setting the tone for your brain's entire day. And if you think refined grains and sugary drinks are bad, the next breakfast item I'm about to reveal will surprise you even more, because it's marketed as a healthy, fiber-rich choice for seniors, yet it may be silently damaging your memory. If you walk down the cereal aisle at any grocery store, you'll see boxes splashed with words like whole grain, heart healthy, and high fiber. They often feature smiling seniors on the packaging, bowls overflowing with golden flakes or crunchy clusters. It feels reassuring, almost as if the company designed it just for you. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Many of these so-called healthy cereals are quietly contributing to memory decline in seniors. Let's start with a mainstream medical fact. While fiber is essential for digestive health and can help regulate cholesterol, not all sources of fiber are created equal. Cereals that advertise added fiber often get it from highly processed ingredients like chicory root extract or inulin, which don't offer the same metabolic stability as fiber from whole foods like oats or berries. Worse, these cereals are usually paired with high levels of added sugars, sometimes 12 grams or more per serving, and a laundry list of preservatives, synthetic vitamins, and artificial flavorings. Here's what makes this combination dangerous for the aging brain. Every morning, your body expects fuel to gently raise your blood sugar and provide steady energy. Instead, these cereals trigger a rapid glucose spike, followed by a crash. For seniors whose insulin sensitivity has often declined, that crash can lead to an energy slump, irritability, and, over time, damage to neurons from repeated glucose toxicity. This is compounded by inflammatory additives like butylated hydroxytoluene, BHT, and butylated hydroxyanisole, BHA, which have been linked in some studies to neurological effects. Take the story of Harold Thompson, 66, a retired machinist who came to my office complaining of fuzzy thinking and frequent lapses in short-term memory. Harold prided himself on avoiding fried foods and red meat, and he started every day with what he believed was the perfect breakfast: a heaping bowl of bran cereal topped with banana slices, plus a glass of orange juice. On paper, it looked like the breakfast of a health-conscious man. But when we analyzed the nutrition labels, the cereal alone contained 14 grams of added sugar and 2 different preservatives, and the juice added another 20 grams of natural fructose, all hitting his system within minutes of waking. Biochemically, here's what happens. The sugar rush causes insulin to spike, which then shoves glucose rapidly into cells, including brain cells. But in older adults with reduced metabolic flexibility, this process is inefficient. Excess glucose lingers in the bloodstream, promoting oxidative stress and inflammation. Over time, these processes erode the health of the hippocampus, the very brain region that stores and retrieves memories. When Harold replaced his cereal and juice routine with steel-cut oats, topped with berries and walnuts, plus water or unsweetened herbal tea, his mid-morning mental clarity improved within weeks. He described it as like a fog lifting, and found he was less forgetful during conversations with friends. The lesson here isn't that all cereal is bad, but that many marketed as healthy are anything but, especially for those over 60. It's the combination of high sugar, processed additives, and misleading marketing that makes them dangerous for memory. And if you think cereal is the most deceptive culprit, wait until we talk about what's hiding in that sweet topping you spread on your morning toast, because it's a silent sugar bomb that can do even more harm to your brain. Picture this. It's a calm morning, and you're sitting down with a fresh slice of toast, steam rising from your coffee cup. You reach for the jar of strawberry jam, bright, sweet, and comforting. Maybe you spread on a little extra for flavor, or you switch it up with honey for a more natural choice. It feels like a wholesome tradition, something you've done for decades. But here's what I want you to know, that sugary spread on your toast may be quietly sabotaging your brain health. From a mainstream medical perspective, refined sugar is one of the most damaging substances for an aging brain. Diets high in added sugars are linked to increased inflammation, reduced synaptic plasticity, your brain's ability to form and strengthen connections, and a greater risk of cognitive decline. When you combine that sugar with the refined flour in most white or soft wheat breads, you create a perfect storm for glucose spikes that are especially harmful to seniors. Now, let's dig into a lesser-known fact. Even natural spreads like honey, maple syrup, or agave nectar can cause rapid blood sugar elevations that flood the brain with glucose. Your neurons are incredibly sensitive to these changes. Repeated exposure to high glucose not only stresses brain cells, but also promotes the buildup of beta-amyloid plaques, a hallmark of Alzheimer's disease. On top of that, many store-bought jams and jellies include high fructose corn syrup and artificial colorings, compounds that can slip through an aging blood-brain barrier and trigger inflammatory reactions inside brain tissue. I'll never forget Margaret Lewis, 70, a retired librarian. Margaret loved her morning ritual: 2 slices of toast with raspberry jam, a cup of tea, and a crossword puzzle. But she came to see me because she'd begun forgetting simple words mid-sentence, something that was both frustrating and embarrassing for her. Her children noticed she was repeating stories she'd told just days before. When we went through her diet, the sugar content of her breakfast stood out like a red flag. Between the bread and jam, she was consuming nearly 30 grams of sugar before 8 a.m. We switched her to a brain-friendly alternative: whole grain bread topped with mashed avocado and a sprinkle of pumpkin seeds, plus green tea without sugar. Within a month, Margaret reported fewer lost words during conversations and a noticeable improvement in her focus while reading. While the change didn't erase all her memory issues, it slowed the pattern that had been worrying her and gave her back a sense of control. Here's the key takeaway: sugar in the morning is like a roller coaster for your brain, fast up, fast down, and exhausting over time. That sweet toast topping might feel harmless, but day after day, it can accelerate the very memory problems so many seniors fear. And if you think sugary spreads are bad, wait until you hear about the processed meats that often share the same breakfast plate, because what's in them can damage your brain in ways sugar never could. For many, breakfast isn't complete without the savory aroma of bacon sizzling in the pan or the satisfying bite of a sausage patty. These foods are comforting, flavorful, and often tied to family traditions, Sunday mornings, holiday brunches, or simple everyday pleasure. But here's the sobering reality. Processed meats like bacon, sausage, and ham are not just a threat to your heart. They may also accelerate memory loss in ways that are far more insidious than most people realize. From a mainstream medical standpoint, processed meats are high in saturated fats, sodium, and, most importantly, nitrates and nitrites, chemical preservatives used to maintain color and flavor. While these compounds help keep meat shelf-stable, once inside your body, they can convert into nitrosamines, substances known to damage blood vessels and impair brain function. In older adults, whose vascular systems are already more fragile, this damage can directly affect blood flow to critical areas of the brain, including the hippocampus, the memory center. Here's a lesser-known fact. Studies have shown that nitrosamines don't just harm blood vessels, they may also disrupt the way your brain uses insulin, leading to what some researchers call type 3 diabetes. This condition describes insulin resistance specifically in brain tissue, which starves neurons of the energy they need to communicate effectively. Over time, this can lead to cognitive decline and even contribute to the development of dementia. Consider the story of Robert Haynes, 74, a retired mechanic. Robert came to see me after experiencing increasing confusion when working on his beloved vintage cars. He'd forget which tools he needed, leave projects half-finished, and sometimes get lost driving to a parts store he'd visited for decades. His diet revealed a lifelong habit. Every morning, without fail, he ate 2 fried eggs with 3 strips of bacon and a sausage link. He believed this was a hearty, protein-rich breakfast to keep him going. When we examined his blood work, Robert's cholesterol and blood pressure were elevated, but what caught my eye was his high homocysteine levels, an indicator of vascular inflammation often linked to cognitive decline. Combined with his daily intake of processed meats, this was a clear red flag. I explained to Robert that while eggs in moderation were fine, the nitrates and nitrites in his bacon and sausage were likely contributing to the inflammation and vascular damage that starved his brain of oxygen-rich blood. We replaced his processed meats with alternatives: turkey slices without nitrates, grilled vegetables, and occasional wild-caught salmon for breakfast. Within 3 months, Robert reported fewer blank moments in the garage and felt more confident driving again. His wife even mentioned he seemed sharper and more engaged in conversations. The takeaway here is simple. The chemicals that preserve processed meats can, over time, preserve them on the plate, but break down your memory in the process. For seniors, this is a trade-off that's simply not worth it. And if you think processed meats are bad, the next item might shock you even more, because it's not about what you eat, but what you pour into your coffee, and how those small daily extras can slowly drain your mental sharpness. For millions of people, the morning doesn't officially start until that first sip of coffee. The rich aroma, the warmth in your hands. It's more than just a drink. It's a ritual. And for many seniors, coffee feels like a safe indulgence, even a health booster, thanks to studies showing its potential benefits for heart health and alertness. But the danger isn't usually in the coffee itself. It's in what you add to it. Those seemingly harmless extras, flavored creamers, artificial sweeteners, and sugary syrups, can quietly chip away at your brain's health day after day. From a mainstream medical standpoint, coffee in moderation can be part of a healthy diet, but when you mix in high levels of added sugar and processed creamers, you're creating a chemical cocktail that spikes your blood sugar and floods your body with pro-inflammatory compounds. Many flavored creamers are loaded with partially hydrogenated oils, a source of trans fats known to increase systemic inflammation and damage blood vessels. And here's the key point. Your brain depends on healthy, flexible blood vessels to deliver oxygen and nutrients. When those vessels are compromised, your memory and focus suffer. A lesser-known fact, several common artificial sweeteners, including aspartame and sucralose, have been shown in some studies to alter gut microbiota and produce metabolites that may cross the blood-brain barrier. For older adults, whose barriers are already more permeable, this means these compounds can reach the brain more easily, potentially affecting neurotransmitter balance and cognitive function. Take the case of Emily Carter, 69, a retired nurse who came to me complaining of mental fuzziness and mood swings. She drank 2 cups of coffee every morning, nothing unusual there. but each cup contained 2 heaping spoonfuls of flavored creamer and a shot of caramel syrup. She thought it was harmless compared to pastries or candy. When we calculated it out, Emily was consuming nearly 30 grams of sugar before 9 a.m., along with hydrogenated oils and artificial flavorings every single day. Over the years, this morning habit had become a slow-moving threat to her brain. Her blood sugar readings were erratic, her triglycerides were creeping upward, and she was experiencing more frequent memory lapses. Once, we replaced her flavored creamer with unsweetened almond milk and cinnamon and swapped the syrup for a small amount of real vanilla extract. Emily noticed changes within a month. She felt more alert in the mornings, her mood stabilized, and those frustrating mid-morning brain fog episodes became far less frequent. This is why I always caution seniors. It's not just the obvious sugary foods you have to watch out for. It's the hidden sugars and chemicals you consume in your everyday rituals. Coffee itself might be fine, but the additives can turn it into a brain-harming beverage. And if you think coffee add-ons are sneaky, wait until you hear about the hidden trans fats in certain breakfast pastries. Because they don't just clog your arteries, they can directly inflame your brain. Imagine walking into your favorite cafe on a crisp morning. The smell of fresh pastries fills the air, flaky croissants, golden donuts, warm cinnamon rolls. You tell yourself it's just a treat and pair it with your coffee. For many seniors, this is a beloved ritual, a little indulgence to start the day. But here's the problem. These pastries often carry a hidden ingredient that can quietly sabotage your brain: trans fats. From a mainstream medical perspective, trans fats are among the most dangerous dietary fats. They raise LDL, or bad cholesterol, lower HDL, or good cholesterol, and increase systemic inflammation. This inflammation doesn't just harm your heart, it also damages the blood vessels in your brain, reducing the flow of oxygen and nutrients needed for healthy memory function. Over time, this damage can contribute to cognitive decline, slower processing speed, and even increase the risk of dementia. Here's the lesser-known fact. Industrially produced trans fats, often labeled as partially hydrogenated oils, don't just affect blood vessels. They can actually integrate into the membranes of brain cells. This changes the structure and flexibility of neurons, making it harder for them to send and receive signals. Think of it like replacing high-quality wiring in your house with brittle, faulty cables. Over time, the system simply doesn't function as well. I remember meeting with Carol Jennings, 71, a retired high school principal. Carol prided herself on eating balanced meals for lunch and dinner, but breakfast was her guilty pleasure, a glazed donut with coffee 3 or 4 mornings a week. She started noticing she was having trouble recalling details from recent conversations, sometimes forgetting where she'd put her keys or parked her car. Her family dismissed it as normal aging, but when we looked at her diet, the trans fat content of her pastries stood out immediately. Each donut contained up to 3 grams of trans fats, more than enough to trigger inflammatory processes in her body. Combine that with the high sugar content, and Carol's brain was being hit with a double blow: inflammation plus glucose spikes. After we switched her breakfast to a slice of whole grain toast with almond butter and fresh berries, plus coffee without artificial creamers, Carol reported clearer thinking within weeks. Her memory wasn't perfect, no single E. Dietary change can reverse aging, but the improvement in her alertness was noticeable to both her and her family. It's important to understand that the occasional pastry isn't the problem. It's the repeated, long-term exposure. For seniors, even small amounts of trans fats consumed consistently can cause cumulative damage that's hard to repair. And if you think pastries are the last hidden danger, you'll want to hear what's coming next. Because that glass of fruit juice you've been told is healthy could be quietly draining your brain power, one sip at a time. For decades, fruit juice has been sold as the epitome of a healthy start to the day. Advertisements show a glass of bright orange liquid catching the morning light, promising vitamins, energy, and a natural boost. Many seniors pour it without a second thought, believing they're doing their bodies a favor. But here's the uncomfortable truth. That glass of juice, especially if it's store-bought, can be a concentrated dose of sugar that silently chips away at your brain health. From a mainstream medical perspective, fruit juice is essentially fruit without its fiber. Fiber in whole fruit slows down the absorption of sugar, allowing your body to process fructose gradually. But in juice form, that sugar hits your bloodstream almost instantly, causing a rapid spike in glucose and insulin. In seniors, whose insulin sensitivity has often decreased, these repeated spikes can contribute to insulin resistance in the brain, a condition linked to memory loss and increased risk of Alzheimer's disease. Here's the lesser-known fact. Fructose, the main sugar in fruit juice, doesn't get metabolized like glucose. Instead, it's primarily processed in the liver, where excessive amounts can lead to lipid buildup and the production of inflammatory compounds. These compounds can cross an aging blood-brain barrier, triggering oxidative stress in neurons. Over time, this inflammation damages the hippocampus, the brain's memory hub. And because juice is easy to drink quickly, it's surprisingly easy to consume the sugar equivalent of several pieces of fruit in just a few gulps. Let me share the story of Samuel Price, 67, a retired architect. Samuel came to my clinic concerned about increasing forgetfulness, misplacing documents, forgetting appointments, even leaving his phone in odd places. His diet was, in his mind, impeccable: oatmeal for breakfast, grilled chicken salads for lunch, and fish for dinner. But every morning, without fail, he drank a tall glass of orange juice, sometimes followed by apple juice as a mid-morning refresher. When we calculated it out, Samuel was consuming nearly 50 grams of sugar from juice before lunch, more than double the World Health Organization's recommended daily limit for added sugars. We replaced his morning juice with whole fruits like blueberries and apple slices, paired with a handful of almonds. Within 6 weeks, Samuel I.O. reported improved focus and fewer lost moments during the day. He even noticed that his mid-morning energy slumps were gone. The change wasn't magic. It was the result of steady blood sugar levels and reduced brain inflammation. The key takeaway is simple. While whole fruit supports brain health, fruit juice, especially in large amounts, can overload your system with sugar and deprive your brain of the steady fuel it needs. And if you think skipping juice is enough, there's one more breakfast mistake that might shock you: not eating enough protein in the morning. It's a habit that can leave your brain underpowered and more prone to memory lapses as the day goes on. Most people think of breakfast as a time to get quick energy, something light, fast, and easy. For seniors, that often means toast with jam, a muffin, or a bowl of cereal. But here's a habit that's quietly undermining brain health in millions of older adults: skipping protein in the morning. It may not seem like a big deal, but without adequate protein, your brain can end up running on unstable fuel, setting the stage for poor focus, low energy, and more frequent memory lapses. From a mainstream medical perspective, protein provides amino acids, building blocks that your body uses to create neurotransmitters like dopamine, serotonin, and acetylcholine. Acetylcholine, in particular, is crucial for memory and learning, and low levels are often seen in people with Alzheimer's disease. When you skip protein, you deprive your brain of the raw materials it needs to make these chemical messengers. Here's the lesser-known fact. Starting your day with only carbohydrates, especially refined ones, can trigger rapid blood sugar spikes and crashes. These fluctuations not only affect your energy, but can also impair the hippocampus's ability to consolidate new memories. Protein slows the digestion of carbs, stabilizing blood sugar and providing a steady stream of amino acids to the brain throughout the morning. For seniors, this stability can mean the difference between a sharp, focused mind and one that drifts into fog by mid-morning. Consider the case of Helen Foster, 73, a retired accountant. Helen had been skipping protein at breakfast for years, opting for a slice of toast with butter or a banana on the go. She came to me worried about her scatterbrain, forgetting whether she'd paid bills, losing her reading glasses multiple times a day, and feeling mentally drained before noon. When we reviewed her diet, it became clear that she was running her brain on quick-burning carbs alone. I recommended she start her day with at least 15 to 20 grams of protein, scrambled eggs with spinach, Greek yogurt with walnuts, or a protein smoothie made with unsweetened almond milk and berries. Within 4 weeks, Helen reported feeling more alert and organized in the mornings. She was remembering details from her crossword puzzles, and even keeping better track of her daily appointments without having to double-check her calendar. For seniors, this isn't just about avoiding hunger. It's about giving your brain the resources it needs to function at its best. A protein-rich breakfast can help stabilize mood, improve focus, and support memory retention throughout the day. And now that we've gone through the 9 common breakfast mistakes that could be harming your brain, it's time to bring it all together in our final section, where I'll share exactly how to build a brain-healthy breakfast that protects your memory for years to come. We've covered a lot of ground, and by now, you've probably looked at your breakfast plate in a whole new light. The truth is, aging changes the way our bodies, and especially our brains, interact with food. Choices that seemed harmless in our 30s or 40s can become dangerous triggers for inflammation, glucose spikes, and slow, steady damage to memory and cognition after 60. But the good news is this: with the right morning habits, you can protect your brain, maintain your clarity, and even feel sharper than you have in years. Let's recap the core message. Your brain is a living, energy-hungry organ. It thrives on steady blood flow, balanced neurotransmitter production, and minimal exposure to inflammatory compounds. Sugary cereals, sweet spreads, processed meats, chemical-laden coffee creamers, pastries with trans fats, juice packed with fructose, and carb-heavy breakfasts with no protein all work against these needs. Over time, they chip away at your brain's resilience, leaving it more vulnerable to forgetfulness, confusion, and cognitive decline. The alternative is simple and powerful. You can build a breakfast that fuels your brain instead of fogging it. Here are 6 brain-safe morning options that I recommend to my patients over 60. Eggs with vegetables and avocado. Provides protein, healthy fats, and antioxidants to protect neurons. Greek yogurt with berries and walnuts. Rich in probiotics for gut health and omega-3s for brain function. Steel-cut oats with chia seeds and blueberries. Slow-digesting carbs for stable energy, plus fiber for gut-brain connection. Smoked salmon on whole-grain bread, nitrate-free. Supplies DHA, a key omega-3 fatty acid for memory. Cottage cheese with sliced pear and cinnamon. Combines protein, low glycemic fruit, and anti-inflammatory spice. Protein smoothie with spinach, almond butter, and unsweetened almond milk. Quick to prepare and full of brain-boosting nutrients. Along with these options, follow these simple rules for brain-healthy breakfasts. Pair carbs with protein or healthy fat to prevent sugar spikes. Limit fruit juice. Eat whole fruits instead. Avoid artificial additives and hydrogenated oils in processed foods. Watch portion sizes. Overeating in the morning can cause post-meal sluggishness. Stay hydrated. Even mild dehydration can affect memory and focus. I want to leave you with reassurance. Memory changes don't have to be inevitable. While none of us can stop the clock, we can choose to give our brains the best possible environment to thrive. Each morning, you have the power to either feed inflammation or fuel clarity. And those small, consistent choices will add up over time. If you've recognized some of your own habits in these last 9 sections, don't be discouraged. Change is always possible, and the brain is remarkably responsive to healthier inputs, even later in life. I've seen patients in their 70s and 80s make breakfast changes and experience noticeable improvements in focus, energy, and memory in just a matter of weeks. So tomorrow morning, when you sit down to eat, ask yourself, is this meal building my brain or breaking it down? That simple question can guide you to a sharper, stronger mind for years to come. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a comment with 1. If not, feel free to comment with 0. Your feedback means a lot to us. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, because knowledge is the first step toward protecting what matters most.